in today's video, I went and saw If last week, and I was under the impression that it was the exact same as Foster's Home for Imagination because the main character, one of the main imaginary friends, this guy right here, is also named Blue, which in Foster's, this guy right here is also named Blue. So I was like, this is a complete ripoff of Foster's that we grew up watching as kids. And I came to realize that it's like, If has a much deeper story than I ever originally realized. And it's so much more impactful than, well, one of the writers that I ended up doing some research on ended up saying, and I'm going to read that to you really quick. So one of the writers from RV Real Views, no hate towards James, Bernard, I don't even know how to say his last name. But like, there's no hate towards him. No, it's just like I blatantly disagree with what he talks about within If. So he says that like the movie wanted to be an ode to an innocent magic of childhood and how we might be in a better place as adults if we could remember these qualities and engage with them. And just for preferences as well too, before I get too into this, there are going to be some spoilers near the end of this movie. But I mean, it's an hour and 45-minute movie, but I just want to give you the option that if like there are areas that you haven't seen the movie, it is kind of a spoiler, but I have to relay this specific thing in order to give the point that I'm wanting to make to help you like basically see the world in a different way, kind of as like B did in the movie If. So basically, it's just like, this is where he misses the main point as to what is being said. It's like the movie wants to be an ode to innocent childhood magic of childhood and how we might be in a better place as adults if we could remember those qualities and engage with them, which he is like, that is 100% true. Like the reason why us as adults, we get so lost in our like own thinking and our own habitual processes or whatever it may be is because like we don't think with that childlike wonder as we once did. Whereas like all I do basically now is like I do my best to remember like the little childhood that I was, because kids, we have imagination. Terribly spelled, but like we have imagination as kids, and like that's the thing is like a lot of us, we just don't understand that like imagination is like what creates our reality. And that's certain aspects that I'm going to touch on here in a bit, but I want to continue with this here for a second is like the problem is that any movie needs more than a fine sentiment, and that's where it fails, which I'm like, that's not true at all. Like there is a fine sentiment, but there's also a very subtle message and meaning that unless you are aware and you've been watching my videos and maybe you've watched some other content online around these concepts, like it would just go over your head because it's so subtle what they did in the movie, and only certain individuals will be able to pick it up. And this is where John Krasinski's magic comes into play and why he is such a genius with what he ended up doing throughout the movie of If. But James, he doesn't see this. And like I said, no hate to James by any means, like don't go scold him or anything like that. It's just he's blatantly wrong with what he's saying. So it's like the problem is that any movie needs to have a fine sentiment, and that's where it fails. The narrative is all over the place. I didn't see it as all over the place, like maybe a little bit here and there. Like it was a little strange, but it's like you don't need to pay attention to the narrative all that much. You need to pay attention to like the subtle cues that your subconscious is going to be picking up, because that's what John's main intention was with the movie, was to have like people that are unconscious of certain ideas and how the imagination works. He was trying to convey a story to him and to them instead of like these other people out there, like just the normal common folks, which is why my community right now is like of truly driven and dedicated people, which I appreciate you for watching the video. Character motivation is confusing. I don't see it as confusing. Like her motivation is like she doesn't want to be alone. She doesn't want to lose her dad. Like she lost her mom. She just wants to be loved. She wants to have a purpose. Like she's in that awkward age as like probably all of us have been at one point in time, where it's like we're 12. We think we know the world. We think we're fantastic. I'm 28 right now and I'm still trying to figure it out. And I have a feeling I'll still be figuring it out 10 years from now, 20 years, 30, 40, 50 years from now. But at least I'll have like a better idea and an inkling of like what it was. But it's like her motivation as a child was the exact motivation that she needed to have to be able to progress the story forward. Back to what James was saying, and worst of all, the story simply isn't interesting, which this is where I disagree with him 100%. Is like, the story is interesting, it's just it wasn't interesting to him because he himself isn't interesting. And this is something like, I don't, like, and I'll say it again too, there's no hate towards this guy by any means. It's just like, if you want to be interested and you want to have an interesting story, you have to be interested in that said story or that said movie that you're going to see. If you're just going to see a movie just to like make this as like a hit piece or whatever it may be. I get it, because like negativity sells, but it's like with what I do on this channel is not to make it so it's negative, because the story was interesting. It's the same principle can also be applied to people. Like if you think people are boring or uninteresting, in all likelihood it's because you're boring and uninteresting. All I can say is like, it's not an attack at you, but like the more you get interested in other people, the more you'll be interesting. So it's like, sure there are, so back to what James was saying, is like, sure there are enough cute animated creatures to entertain younger kids, target audience 6 to 10. Which, this is the funny thing, dude, is like, so kid movies, as I've come to realize over the years, is like there's always going to be those subtle hidden jokes within the like kids movies that are not always going to be necessarily seen in like, I guess, a certain way, shape, or form. Like we can look at what's the I was thinking The Road to El Dorado or something like that. El Dorado couch. Like I don't know if you guys remember this scene at all or not. But like there's all these hidden like things within movies that are made for adults. Like we all get that, but like as kids, like we just don't understand that aspect. It doesn't make sense to us. So it's like there's certain principles or ideas within the movie that like if you aren't aware of these concepts and these ideas that I'm sharing with you in this movie, like it just goes right over your head. So I'm not saying that like John or James is like an idiot, but he he just hasn't had the same understanding and clarity that like you and I do. So he hasn't seen the full essence of like who the audience is, because as I was saying, like I'm a 28-year-old and I went and saw this movie by myself. I didn't say by myself, but I did go see the movie by myself. I go see movies by myself all the time. It's absolutely fantastic. And if you haven't done it, highly recommend doing that. But it's just like the audience, a 6 to 10-year-old, like they're going to understand it more than somebody like than their parents might. Like there was a kid sitting next to me and he was kind of confused as to what happened near the end of the movie, because little bit of spoilers right here. Like when B opens the door at the end, like there's nothing in this room that she had been going up to this entire time. And one of the kids was like, what happened? Like he didn't understand it, but like somebody that understands like that what she was imagining, and once she realized that like all she has to do, as one of the characters said, I think it was Clive in the movie that said all she had to do was like close her eyes and he'd be with her all the time. Or it was when Blue said it as well too, like if you just close your eyes, then like I'm here with you. I don't remember the exact person that did. I should have taken a little bit better notes when I was in the movie theater. But like when she realized that like it was all within her head, it was like, oh wait, what? And it's just like that was the main message that John was trying to convey and wanted to convey to his audience. But like James, that just went right over his head. He was thinking that, oh, I'm going into this movie to see it as like a cute kid's little movie. And like this is the thing about stories and movies, is like everybody is going to have a different perspective on what a movie is and like how it looks. And I have a prime example for this as well, which maybe I need to start doing more lives for you guys. If you want that, like just comment down below and let me know if you'd rather have a live compared to like these movies. But like I was watching this other clip this morning, or this other video, which I didn't even know that this was the case, but it's like it's the exact same movie. It was from this other guy that's just kind of getting started out on YouTube more or less, and he did a scene from Breaking Bad where he was analyzing like it's the exact same like movie or film or whatever it may be, and yet like it's the exact same script, but like there's two different statures. I highly recommend going and checking out his video, because he really does relay like how certain events do craft like how certain people are. And I believe it's in this scene right here, which just make it, channel's not even monetized, so it doesn't really matter.
This person doesn't know what the hell he's doing, and the taskist doesn't do it poorly.
Hold on, we go right here.
Gustavo lets him finish, and the moment itself is quite different. First, Gus abruptly attacks Victor, catching everyone off guard in a more erratic and surprising manner. In a single shot, we witness the varied reactions of Mike, Walter, and Jesse, each responding differently. Mike disavows his boss, instinctively raising the gun as he perceives it as a threat. Walter is visibly frightened, fearing for his life, while Jesse exhibits more than fear, anger.
So like this is the point that I'm conveying as well too. Like, so when I go see this movie, when I go see If, I imagine like I go into it originally thinking that it's like it's just a rip off of Foster's, like that's all it is. But then it comes down to like this deep meaning of like, oh, everything that we ever know is just imagined in our own head, and if we just close our eyes, we'll never be alone. Because there's a part when they're going to the Ferris wheel movie, like when they're going to the Ferris wheel to go like see the Fosters, like to see all the imaginary friends that you see. It's when Clive Ryan Reynolds' character is like, you should know this by now that you're never alone. And like you never truly are alone. When you close your eyes, like you always have somebody with you. You always have your imaginary friend with you. And that's why I don't like the aspect where it's just like, where James, I'm going to tie this back, where it's just like he wants the ode to the innocent magic of childhood and how we might be in a better place if adults could remember those qualities and engage with them. It's not even that we might be in a better place, we will be in a better place if we can imagine and remember back to our childhood. Too often we get too constrained with these adult things that come into our mind and we forget our childhood aspect, our childhood wonder, our imagination, that like we do have imaginary friends with us no matter where we go and whatever we imagine. Like we're never truly alone, and it's why I myself personally don't come onto social media as much. It's why I don't watch as many videos. It's why like I don't take my phone into the bathroom, is because we have this inherent nature within ourselves that we can like sit with our own thoughts, but we've been so conditioned that like not to use our own imagination. And I want to help you like get back to like your own internal thoughts and figure out like what your desires are versus what somebody else's desires are. But that's for videos on a different day. We're still just analyzing If. But there's this whole scene, basically, like I was saying, with Breaking Bad as well. And I know we were just set up as talking about If, but it's the same concept. Like this same event is happening for all three of them, but all three of them are going off of different previous experiences and stories that they have, which is exactly what James, why I keep saying John because John Krasinski wrote the movie, exactly what James ended up doing, because all he was doing was like he's going off of the past experiences that he has had around like maybe imagination and his friends, and like maybe he had a rough childhood. Like I don't know James's backstory, none of us do, so that's why like I say not to use any hate, but like he's just going off of like what he knows makes hit pieces. And clearly, like, it's getting me to talk about it. So, like, whatever he did, it worked. And maybe I'll do a Rick and Morty episode on that as well, too, around, like, the pants and the laser beams and all of that as well. But it's just, like, Jesse's using his emotions and his feelings because he associates, like, bad things happening at one time. So he's using his imagination to create their own stories of, like, what's happening and how he identifies human life. Whereas Walter's like, oh, crap, I'm losing control. Like, I thought I was going to die and this is what's going to happen to me, so now I'm terrified. And then Mike, he's like, well, what's going on? Like, this is my boss. Like, does this mean that this is going to happen to me now too if I disobey like orders or whatever it is? So like all these different scenarios are going through these three different people's minds, but like the exact same thing, like the same event happened, but everybody's perceiving it in different ways, which is exactly what happens in If. Everybody is perceiving the situations in different ways, even though like it does seem to be the same thing. Like the exact same thing happened. Like James walks out of the movie and he's like, "This is a terrible movie." Like the whole story was all over the place. Like it's not for kids 6 to 10. Like the audience is great. Like it's just like there's not enough substance to keep parents. And this is the part I didn't like, where it's like there's not enough substance to keep parents from wishing they were next door watching something less snooze-inducing, which is entirely wrong. Like, dude, I was weeping through the whole movie, basically. Like, I was just, tears were flowing down my face because it's like there's finally somebody out there that understood, like, these concepts and these ideas that I have running through my head. And I was like, if John gets it, a famous writer, screenwriter on The Office, creator of The Quiet Place, like, creator of all these great movies, like, he understands how the imagination works and how it influences our life, whereas James, he just doesn't understand it, which is why it's just like when James was like, I suspect, however, that when Paramount greenlit the project, they weren't anticipating such a limited target demographic, which I don't think it's target demographic or it was limited. It's just you have to be on a higher level of consciousness to be able to understand the hidden meanings that are within If, but it's just like he just doesn't understand it because he's on like the lower level of consciousness, which nothing wrong with that. I know it can kind of sound a little condescending, but like I've been there and I was able to raise myself up through trial and error. So if I can do it, then you can do it as well too. So it's like in the wake of the success of A Quiet Place and its sequel, Krasinski built up enough goodwill at the studio, was willing to trust his judgment. This is what James said, by the way. Sadly, if shows that much trust may have been misplaced. Sadly, If shows that trust may have been misplaced, which I don't see that being misplaced at all. This was the exact movie that we needed to have to be able to induce and hopefully re-spark like that imagination that you have within yourself that's like, okay, everything that I was going through my head, maybe it is all just imaginary. Maybe it's all the stories that I've been telling myself, because at the very beginning of the movie, that's exactly what B says, is like the stories that we tell ourselves are the most important ones. And if we change the stories that we tell ourselves, then everything else around us starts changing. And this is why, like, maybe you think it's very hard to make views, or it's very hard to get money, or it's very hard for you to get out of your situation. because in all likelihood, you're telling that story over and over and over again of how things don't work out for you. I know I've been in that place. I've been doing a lot of journaling around this, and why I have the credibility to talk about this is because like I understand how difficult it can be when you tell the same story over and over and over again and you keep getting the same results. So you have to be willing to change your story, being willing to like go into your imagination, see that like, maybe these things that I once thought to be true are no longer true. And maybe the things that I've once believed, it's just all been within my own head and it's been the story that I've been creating. Because that's quite literally exactly what B does within the story. And you find that out near the end. It's just like she created all of these stories, these imaginary characters to help her get through another tough time because she didn't want to have to be traumatized like when she lost her mom and having to lose her dad again. It's a concept that our minds do. Like they put up these barriers. I'm not a psychologist, but I listen to a lot of psychology and I absolutely love it in sales and strategies and things like that. But it's just like she puts up this whole front of like being strong and independent, and she is because she has all these other like friends supporting her in her imagination. That's why like when the movie starts out, it's like the stories that we tell ourselves are the most important, and you have to be willing to change your stories, manipulate them, persuade them, like sell yourself on different ideas or stories or perspectives if you truly do want to change, because change requires you to let go of certain aspects of yourself, which is what I was talking about in the video that I did a couple days ago around The Giver and how like my dog passed away or is getting put down basically because she can barely walk, doesn't want to be outside, just laying all down on the place. But it's like this is such a hard concept for me to relay, but I'm gonna try to make it as simple as possible and just give you a brief. And then if you want to look into it, you can look into it. But it's just like when you die or you have an animal die or whatever it may be, it's just like they aren't gone forever. Like their energy just goes back to somewhere else. It's Newton's third or second law, where it's just like you have these different ideas and perspectives that you can like start to mold and shift into your own like essence and being. And it's also like you can't create nor destroy energy. So like the energy that is within you, your soul, your spirit, the thing that's fighting for you, that can never go. And that's why like be her imagination. People that have a powerful imagination can create realities within themselves that then will start to manifest in the external world. But too often you think that like, oh, I don't want to have a big furry blue creature. Hold on 1 second, I need some water. Oh my goodness. I know I'm on a roll right now. I could slow it down. But, like, it's just interesting to see. I'm just so passionate about this stuff, dude. Like, once you understand that everything is just, like, in your head and you're the one that's creating your scenarios, like, when you think that something isn't interesting, it's because you yourself aren't interesting. When you think that something's a snooze fest, it's because you yourself are snoozing around this said thing. Like, it's not every movie is going to be for every person. Not every video is going to be for each individual, but the right videos will be attracted to the right people. So tying back to the last part that James said, and then we'll wrap up the video, is like wherever things went wrong, we're left with a disappointing result and a chance to ponder what this might have been if only a different path had been taken. I just don't agree with that. The path that was taken was the perfect path that needed to be taken because it was a path that gave like people that are aware of the imagination and how like you are the one that is creating your own reality and you get to see things and you have experiences, and some people might be like, oh, you're a schizo or whatever it is, because I had some dude comment that beforehand. But it's also like you all are thinking all the time. Like you have all these thoughts in your head, you're thinking about anything. So it's like, why not choose the thoughts that you want to think? Why not create like powerful characters that can stand up and protect you? Because like the scene, I believe it's actually, there's a clip in this article. So like this scene right here when Blue's sitting back next to his imaginary friend, like this part touches me heavily because it's like when he finally goes into the meeting and he's starting to like close his eyes because he's going back to his childhood when like life was simpler. And this is something that happens to all of us. Like we get just so conditioned into like, oh, I need to go do this, I need to do that, I need to go to work, I need to have this amount of money, I need to exercise this amount, whatever excuses or things that you're doing right now may be, like that is valid. But it's just like once you close your eyes and you can kind of go back to that moment, it's like now you start to become empowered, because as he finally starts to like walk up into the meeting, that's when like Blue comes up and just touches him on the back and he's like, hey, you're okay, you've got this. And that's when he's like, I do. And it's just like he saw that in his imagination because he was the one that created the story within his own head first before relaying it to anybody else on the outside. But it just takes time for somebody to come to that realization. It comes through meditation, it comes through other aspects, but it's just like you have to be patient with yourself. But having somebody that's like kind of sad and down in the dumps, but then having that like little other voice in your head, that other imaginary friend that is able to kind of like push you forward, that wants you to keep fighting, that knows that you can succeed. Like that's the one that you want to cultivate. You don't want to have this like small little coward like imaginary voice in your head that's like, oh, you can't do this. That's saying like, oh, this isn't interesting, or it's like, oh, this is a snooze fest for parents or whatever it is. And it's just like, that's because that's probably what your life is like right now. So like typically, and I'm not, like I said multiple times, I'm not trying to scold this guy or anything like that, because he at least put something out there, which is fantastic. It's just a matter of like, you got to understand that like everybody's going to engage in their own unique individual way. And that's why it's just like, it's kind of sad to see that not everybody understood the message, but not everybody ever will understand the message. At least he put something out there. People would rather complain about something how this isn't the right way, or this isn't the way that it needs to be. And I listen to this all the time at the gym, and I'm just like, if you guys just understood, but it's like, you can't change somebody that doesn't want to change. But it's just like, they'd rather complain about how like If wasn't the masterpiece that they wanted it to be, but it was the exact masterpiece that John had within his head that he wanted to create, and he at least had the courage to step out and do this thing and present himself in this mood or in this light and this perspective that very few individuals would be willing to do and have done. And that's why it's like the rating's so low, because he gets 48 Rotten Tomatoes. It almost prevented me from going, but I was like, there was something that called me to go see the movie, and I'm so grateful and so glad that I did. And I highly recommend that you go see the movie as well too, because it's not a ripoff of Foster's. It's this much more deeper meaning around like the power of the imagination, around the power of your beliefs, around how like when you're going through troubling times, your mind will create scenarios and stories to help you get through those traumatic events, especially if you're a kid or an adult or anywhere in your life, to hopefully help you prevent and avoid those sad feelings, those negative emotions that I was talking about in the video that I did a couple days ago. I just want you to keep that in mind, that like if you want something, you can have it. You just have to create it within your own head first, and then have trust and faith that those things will come to fruition. Cool. That was a great little rant spiel, ideas, perspectives. Hope it made sense. If you made it to the end of the video, I appreciate it. I know 99% of people do make it to the end of the video, so I'm grateful for having you make it all the way through. And I will see you guys in the next video. Up until then, if you have any other questions, ideas, suggestions, maybe I'll do another live stream here soon. Really enjoyed getting to talk with you the other day. But yeah, hopefully this helps and is valuable to you. I know it's been valuable to me as myself. One last thing I will leave you with is practical advice, and you can go do your own research. Like, don't take my word for it. I didn't take my word for it when I first started learning these things. I went and like experimented with it in different areas in my life, because that's what like being a scientist, a psychologist, like a learner is like, you learn something, you go test it, you try it. If it works, cool. If not, like no worries. But like, you can physically conjure up an idea within your head if you just close your eyes and imagine it to be true. And it's just like, that is something that you do have the power to do. But most people have neglected their imagination because they don't think that it's worth doing, and they've just succumbed to the constant run and roll of like going around the wheel and the whole rat race type of thing. It's just like, all they do is they wake up, they go to work, they fall asleep. Like, and most of them will wake up, work, sleep, TV, or in some order like that. Like, that's all they do. But like, we have this innate power within us to like imagine, like to do this and create something out of nothing, and have the courage to stand up and do these things. It's just very few individuals seem to do that. And it's sad that they would rather complain about how their life isn't going the way they want to, or that things aren't working the way that they are. And I was even journaling about this the other day too, is like, we are in complete control of our actions. Like, we can't control the circumstances by any means, but what we can do is we can imagine like friends, we can imagine like our situation changing. And then the crazy part about this, and I've kind of said a little bit, but like, it will change your circumstances on the outside. This is what yoga talks about. This is what happens in meditation. This is what happens from journaling. This is what happens when you change the story that you tell yourself. Like, when you tell yourself that you aren't this way, that's all you're ever going to see. But when you start to tell yourself that like, hey, I am a success, I am abundant, I am worthy, I am accepting, I do have a great imagination, I am healthy, I am in shape, like I do eat healthy, I do have a successful YouTube channel, I do have a successful business, whatever words that you want to use, like as you start to say those and you believe them to be true, you'll start to see them happen in other areas of your life. But it's just like, you have to change the stories, as I was saying. Like, those are the most important stories, is the stories that you tell yourself are always the stories that seem to indicate and dictate your life. And I may have shared this quote with you once before, but like, the story, like the beliefs that we believe, like we question all of our beliefs except those beliefs that we truly believe. Those we never decide to question. And if you can understand that aspect and start to question the beliefs that you truly do believe, it could be around religion, spirituality, movies such as If, or like any concept really at all. Like once you start to do that and you start to have a different grasp around like your essence and your reality by questioning like, maybe this isn't always true. And this is what I was talking about in The Giver as well, because these concepts are all in different movies. They're just expressed in different ways that make sense to different people. But like once you see it and once you're open to these interpretations, that's when the world really starts to get interesting. All right, I think we'll wrap it up there. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, discard the concerns. If you have any questions or comments, leave it down in the description box down below or in the comment section below. I'll catch you in the next video with whichever one it is. Maybe another Rick and Morty one. Not entirely sure, but we'll keep grinding, keep doing what I can, impacting the lives and people that are listening and enjoying this type of content, and we'll just keep growing from there. So, love you, and we'll chat soon. Later.